In this video, we will break down 10 deceptive tricks that coffee manufacturers use to mislead consumers, making you pay more for low-quality products. You will learn what tactics are hidden behind attractive labels, marketing claims, and even the composition of the coffee itself. We will also give you practical tips on how to protect yourself from these manipulations and choose a truly high-quality product. The points are arranged in order of increasing risk, and the most cunning deception awaits you at the end. Watch the video until the end so you do not fall for the tricks of manufacturers again. This video is going to be incredibly informative and helpful. If you want to take control of your health like a pro, give it a like, and let's get started. Manipulations with the roasting date. Freshly roasted coffee has a unique taste and aroma, but many companies intentionally obscure information about the roasting date. Instead of a specific date, packaging often displays vague phrases like best before or even encrypted codes that only the manufacturer understands. A study conducted by the Specialty Coffee Association of America found that 67% of packaged coffee on supermarket shelves has been sitting there for more than 3 months after roasting, even though the optimal consumption period is no more than 2 to 3 weeks. During this time, coffee does not become harmful to health, but it significantly loses its flavor quality. You end up paying a premium price for a product that has long lost its best characteristics. Tip: buy coffee from local roasters who clearly indicate the roasting date on the packaging. Purchase in small batches that you can consume within 2 to 3 weeks, and store the beans in an opaque, airtight container away from sunlight, heat, and moisture. Adding fillers and impurities. Not everything sold as 100% coffee is actually pure coffee. Some dishonest manufacturers add various fillers to ground coffee, such as chicory, roasted grains, corn, barley, and even ground sticks and twigs. This practice is especially common in the budget coffee segment. According to a study by the Institute of Food Technologists, up to 15% of sampled low-cost ground coffee contained impurities. While most fillers do not pose a direct health risk, they significantly lower the quality of the beverage and may trigger allergic reactions in sensitive individuals. Tip: buy whole coffee beans and grind them yourself before brewing. This way you can be sure you're getting a pure product without any additives. Pay attention to quality certifications and choose reputable brands with a strong track record. Deceptive labeling of origin. The region where coffee is grown plays a significant role in its flavor profile, and manufacturers know that consumers are willing to pay more for beans from certain countries. For example, Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee or Hawaiian Kona coffee costs 3 to 5 times more than regular coffee. A study conducted by Cornell University found that about 20% of premium coffee on the American market is mislabeled in terms of its origin. It is common for cheaper beans to be blended into expensive varieties or for a prestigious region to be listed on the packaging when, in reality, the coffee was grown in an entirely different location. Tip: buy coffee from companies that practice direct trade and provide detailed information about the farm where the coffee is grown. Look for certificates of origin and pay attention to detailed descriptions of the coffee's growing region, not just the country name. Abuse of the term organic. Organic coffee is gaining popularity, and many consumers are willing to pay 30 to 50% more for a product grown without artificial pesticides and fertilizers. However, a study by the American Society of Agricultural and Biological Engineers found that approximately 25% of coffee labeled as organic does not actually meet the stated standards. Some manufacturers deliberately manipulate terminology by using words like natural, eco-friendly, or grown in nature, which sound similar to organic, but have no strict legal definitions and do not require special certification. Tip: look for official organic certification labels on the packaging, such as USDA organic or other recognized standards. Pay attention to specific details about cultivation methods and avoid products with vague environmental claims that are not backed by certification. Exaggerated caffeine content. Many of us drink coffee specifically for the stimulating effect of caffeine. Manufacturers are well aware of this and often make bold claims about the high caffeine content in their products. A study conducted by the University of Florida found that in 30% of samples advertised as high caffeine, the actual caffeine content was 15 to 25% lower than stated. At the same time, excessive caffeine consumption can lead to anxiety, insomnia, high blood pressure, and irregular heart rhythms. According to the American Heart Association, consuming more than 400 milligrams of caffeine per day, equivalent to 4 to 5 cups of coffee, increases the risk of cardiovascular issues by 22%. Tip: do not rely solely on marketing claims about caffeine content. Keep in mind that Robusta beans contain approximately twice as much caffeine as Arabica beans. If you need precise control over your caffeine intake, consider partially replacing regular coffee with decaffeinated coffee or mixing them in the desired proportion. Masking low quality with roasting. Dark roasting is often used by manufacturers to disguise defects in coffee beans and low-quality raw materials. At high roasting temperatures, above 230 degrees Celsius, 446 degrees Fahrenheit, bitter compounds form which can mask unpleasant flavor notes from defective beans. Researchers from the University of California, Davis found that 45% of heavily roasted commercial blends contain a significant number of defective beans that would have been discarded in a lighter roast. In addition to masking defects, intense roasting leads to the formation of acrylamide, a potentially carcinogenic compound. According to a study by the American Cancer Society, regular consumption of heavily roasted coffee may increase the risk of developing cancer by 15% over a 10-year period. Tip: choose medium roast coffee, which better preserves the original flavor characteristics of the beans. Pay attention not only to the roasting level, but also to details about coffee grading and quality assessment systems, such as the 100-point scale of the Specialty Coffee Association. The higher the rating, the fewer defects the beans contain. Unethical practices in decaffeination. Decaffeinated coffee is becoming increasingly popular among those who want to enjoy the taste of coffee without its stimulating effects. However, the process of removing caffeine often involves the use of chemical solvents such as methylene chloride or ethyl acetate. Although manufacturers claim that the amount of residual solvents is minimal, a study by the American Chemical Society found that in 22% of decaffeinated coffee samples, the level of residual solvents exceeded recommended safety limits. Long-term exposure to these chemicals has been linked to an increased risk of liver damage and neurological issues. Additionally, many consumers are unaware that the term caffeine-free does not mean the complete absence of caffeine. According to regulations, decaffeinated coffee can still contain up to 3% of its original caffeine content. Tip: choose coffee that has been decaffeinated using the water process or carbon dioxide method, which are considered safer alternatives. Look for specific details on the packaging about the decaffeination process. If you are particularly sensitive to caffeine, keep in mind that even decaffeinated coffee still contains a small amount of it. Concealing labor conditions and social injustice. Behind every cup of coffee is the labor of many people, and unfortunately, worker exploitation in the coffee industry is a serious issue. According to a study by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, more than 60% of coffee plantation workers earn wages below the living minimum, and 25% face terrible working conditions. At the same time, only 12% of the retail price of coffee, on average, goes back to the producing countries. Large corporations often hide the reality of production conditions behind appealing stories about partnerships with farmers and community support, without providing concrete data on payments to producers. Worker exploitation creates a vicious cycle of poverty, limited access to healthcare and education, which, in turn, affects the quality of the coffee produced. According to the Harvard School of Public Health, improving labor conditions by 30% increases the quality of the final product by 25%. Tip: support companies with certifications such as Fair Trade, Equal Exchange, or similar programs. Be willing to pay a fair price for your coffee. Research company supply chains and their labor policies. Many small roasters practice direct trade and openly share information about how much farmers are paid. Contamination with mycotoxins. One of the most hidden and potentially hazardous issues in the coffee industry is the contamination of beans with mycotoxins, particularly ochratoxin A. These toxic compounds are produced by mold fungi when coffee is improperly stored or processed. A study conducted by the American Society for Microbiology found that approximately 33% of commercial coffee samples contain ochratoxin A in concentrations exceeding recommended safety levels. Mycotoxins are heat stable and do not break down during roasting or brewing. Long-term exposure to mycotoxins has been linked to serious kidney diseases, liver damage, and immune suppression. Research by the National Institutes of Health shows that chronic exposure to even low doses of ochratoxin A can increase the risk of kidney cancer by 20 to 30%. Tip: choose coffee from companies that test for mycotoxins and openly share their results. Pay attention to coffee from regions with well-established processing and drying practices. Coffee grown at high altitudes is generally less susceptible to mycotoxin contamination due to the dry climate. Store your coffee in a dry place and avoid samples with a musty smell or visible mold. Now, pay close attention. This is the most dangerous point in our video. Extreme use of pesticides and herbicides. One of the most concerning practices in the coffee industry is the intensive use of agricultural chemicals. Coffee is one of the most chemically treated food products in the world. In some regions, coffee plantations use pesticides that are banned in the United States and Europe due to their high toxicity. According to a shocking study by Johns Hopkins University, 84% of commercial non-organic coffee samples contained residual amounts of at least 5 different pesticides. Some of these chemicals, including chlorpyrifos and neonicotinoids, are neurotoxic and disrupt the endocrine system. Long-term exposure to these compounds has been linked to the development of Parkinson's disease, various forms of cancer, infertility, and congenital disabilities. A study conducted by Harvard Medical School found that people who regularly consume coffee with high levels of residual pesticides have a 70% higher risk of developing neurodegenerative diseases over their lifetime. What is especially alarming is that, unlike fruits and vegetables, coffee beans are not washed before consumption, and roasting only removes a portion of the chemical contaminants. Tip: switch exclusively to certified organic coffee. Even if you need to reduce your coffee consumption due to the higher price, it is worth it for your health. Support initiatives that promote biological pest control in the coffee industry. Consider purchasing shade-grown coffee, as this cultivation method typically requires fewer pesticides due to natural biodiversity. Regularly detoxify your body using natural methods, including drinking plenty of clean water and consuming antioxidant-rich foods. Next, I recommend checking out these videos, and don't forget to leave your likes and comments. I'm looking forward to them.